Next up, we want to talk about a big issue that has been happening really within the last 12 hours right now with the pressure of President Trump putting on the Colombian leader. And it seems like the Colombian president has already caved to President Trump's threats here. So let's bring in a very special guest here on Live Now from Fox to help break it down. Hal Kempfer, national security expert. Thank you so much for being with us here. We always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
All right, so let's talk about this, Hal. It seems like this was all done within a round of golf here for President Trump, who is enjoying this Sunday golfing as he normally does. But it seems like we already got a conclusion to this whole ordeal with taking back the migrants.
Mike, if they were playing a round of golf, I'd say they were playing 9 holes. This went really fast. This was basically part of it was a little slower. Part of the President Trump's deportation program is sending flights down to Latin America. He's got flights going into Guatemala. There's a site there where they're flying a lot of aliens into, and then also, and I think the Guatemala isn't just Guatemalan aliens are actually, or I should say, Guatemalan citizens are actually flying some others from Central America and possibly even Mexico down there. And then they're sending flights to down to Colombia and other places. But the interesting thing is that they've been using military flights. Of course, the military is very responsive. They can get the military stuff set up very quickly, and they did. And Colombia's president took great exception to that. Gustavo Petro, he's more of what's considered a left-wing socialist politician in Latin American politics. And I'm not just saying that. He describes himself as a socialist as well. And so he kind of pushed back. He says, hey, this is not dignified. I don't want military flights down here with Colombian citizens coming down from the United States. It just doesn't look right. And he pushed back, says, we will not accept them. And so President Trump turned around and said, well, we're going to slap a 25% tariff on all Colombian goods coming into the U.S. And if we don't resolve it in the week, it's going to go up to 50%. Well, this would have catastrophic economic implications for Colombia. And so he immediately turned around, and I won't say completely turned around, but he definitely turned around. Some would say partially. I would say if it wasn't a 180-degree turn, it was probably close to a 170-degree turn. He said he will use the presidential jet from Colombia to fly Colombian citizens back down to Colombia. Now, it's not clear at this point if he has completely allowed U.S. military aircraft to fly Colombian citizens down, but I would say there's a lot of room there for negotiation. And by the way, when you're talking about military planes, when they outfit them for passengers, or what they call packs in military parlance, when they outfit them, they have these modular seat configurations they put in. So when you're inside, I mean, it's not a nice airline type of feel, but you do have seats. It's got all the stuff you'd have on a regular airline, to include food service and everything else. So it is not some barren back of a plane like we're kind of used to when we see, when we evacuate people out of, for example, out of, these sort of exigent things like Afghanistan or something like that. You just are basically piling people in the back of an empty, C-17 or something like that just to get them out. This is not that. My understanding is these planes have been basically had the modular seats put in and everything else. But with that said, having a U.S. military plane, he found politically offensive in some ways, and or certainly, it has a certain appearance to it that's different than a civilian airliner. And so he's pushed back kind of, but you say the presidential plane. By the way, there is no rapid way to refit the presidential plane. I mean, and these I feel bad for the Colombia. Well, look, if you're trying to get to the United States from Colombia, I don't care how you got there. It's a tough trip. And especially if you have to go through the San Blas region, of Central America, where it is just jungles and everything there can kill you, to include most of the people that are there in the jungle as well, who are, gang infested, everything else, and then working your way all up to the U.S. And then if you get deported, you're being put on one of the most sumptuous executive jets in the world flying back down to Colombia. It is. I have to say, for some, they're going to be kind of spinning their heads, going, "This is very strange." Not thrilled with being deported, but this is a very interesting way to go back.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about how surreal that would be that you're coming back on a presidential plane. And I just want to wonder, the president there of Colombia, he thought it would be disrespectful to come back on American military planes, but now coming back on his own presidential plane, is he worried, do you think, about maybe what condition it's going to be in when it arrives back?
I think at this point, he's just so desperate to stop the 25%, the 50% tariff schedule that I don't think he's worried about it. And by the way, one of the things that is at the disposal of the president that he can make a quick decision on is releasing his own plane for any purpose. So I think that may have been part of it. It was a quick, I've got to do something sort of reaction. And so I'm sure in the back of his mind, he is a little concerned about the condition of the aircraft after it gets done with certainly a number of flights back and forth. But I think also there is now negotiating room now that he has made the decision to basically back down and allow flights to go and included his own presidential aircraft in there. I see where there's a lot of negotiating room with the U.S. in terms of some sort of, maybe one could say, face-saving way that that he would assure that he would say, well, I've talked to the U.S. and they're going to retrofit these planes for passengers, and that inside they will look like a regular passenger jet with seats and everything else. And he could say that. The reality is they'd already done that, but he could say it, and I would not be surprised if at the end of the day they work out some sort of arrangement that allows that to happen. The other thing too that President Trump has at his disposal is there is a large civilian reserve air fleet that he could mobilize potentially for this purpose. Those are commercial airliners. Those are also basically commercial aircraft for air freight and everything else. I've seen this in multiple instances where we've used this, mostly with wars in the Middle East. First time I ever saw it in mass was Desert Storm, but we do have this capability, and that is another possibility that they could do. Of course, the concern is security on the aircraft. You're forcibly deporting individuals back to their home countries. I'm sure part of the concern would be that one of them could panic or do something aboard the aircraft. They want to make sure they have some ability to restrain that individual from doing something that could potentially endanger the aircraft and all the crew and passengers on it. So that may be part of the rationale why they're using military aircraft, is simply because of who would be on the aircraft and how they could deploy on the aircraft more effectively to maintain that security posture that they need to move those aliens, if you want to say illegal aliens, whatever you want to say, the deportees back safely to their home countries.
And how, what kind of statement does this make to other countries as far as seeing really the retaliation ways that President Trump could put these tariff measures and really hard pressure on places like Colombia? What does that put for the other parts in the region?
I would say that message that went down to Colombia was heard probably most loudly in Mexico City. And they saw how quickly President Trump reacted with the importation of not just tariffs, but very high tariffs, very aggressive tariffs. That's the sort of thing that could literally cripple Mexico's economy if he was to do the same thing to Mexico. And I think what he was doing was he was sending a message. There has been a shift in politics in both Central and South America. It's moved away from more centrist political leaders to more of the either the further left or further right. If you go down to Argentina, it moved much further right. If you go to Colombia, it moved much further left. In fact, the first left-wing president that they've had there that frankly I can remember in decades, huge shift there. But then they're also dealing with other countries in the region where there has been a shift away from the centrist candidates. I don't think Panama would be amongst those countries. It's been in the news a lot, but I think what they're doing is they're sending a message to all the countries where we're receiving a lot of shall we say, illegal aliens or people who are basically coming across the border illegally into our country. That he's sending a message to all those capitals that if you will not allow us to deport them to your country, the reaction by the United States government will be very swift and will be very big. And I think that's a message that's being heard. Although with some of the countries, Guatemala, as I mentioned earlier, I think they've already had that message and they said we're going to make an accommodation with this right now. So that's not an issue. But I would say other countries, definitely countries like Bolivia are listening. Countries like Peru are definitely listening. You know, certainly other countries, just all up and down, Central America, South America are listening, and probably even countries in the Caribbean are paying very close attention to what has just happened here.
Yeah, truly, truly big news that was happening today, and especially in that region. So we appreciate Hal, you talking with us on that.